you look at the windsock, which is with this kind of aircraft something more than mandatory, and it's a basis of landing and taking off. And so you look at the windsock and you just pick up your axis for landing or for taking off in this aircraft, which are quite difficult to handle in a crosswind. Look at a Spitfire, for instance. If you're in one of the tents over there or the crowd line and you do have Spitfires in front of you, look at the narrowness of their landing gear. The aircraft seems to be on stilts, and in fact, when the wind blows sideways on the Spitfire, the tail wheel is completely free to swivel, and you're not guiding the aircraft through the tail wheel, so you end up having to fly the aircraft with the control surfaces, the rudder, the ailerons, even though you're still on the ground and you have barely enough airspeed. You don't have enough airspeed, for instance, yet to take off, but your aircraft is responding to your movements on the controls, and so this is why at the time they had built these big, huge fields. And this is why at the time they designed aircraft like these ones. Later, runway was invented or used more extensively, and aircraft design changed. And today we can take off and land with a Boeing 777. You can land with 35 knots of crosswind, which is impressive. Anyway, it's impressive. But on this old aircraft, ancient machinery, it's a bit tricky. And
so there's always a few seconds of basically out of control.
Yeah.
Hold your breath.
Yeah, you hold your breath. Yeah. And this is what makes flying. And this afternoon it's going to be a huge feast of flying. We're going to be flying together. You'll have some of the world's, let's put it this way, and people on the pilot tent, please don't listen, but you frankly are going to see some of the world's best pilots in terms of precision and art.
Yeah.
These aircraft, to be properly flown, require an artistic sense of the third dimension, and some of those who are going to fly this afternoon are really masters at that. So it's a gorgeous afternoon about flying and about history, of course.
Now, we're not going to be able to do a great deal of commentary during this lot, are we? Because a lot of this stuff is large formations, and we're going to be holding our words because we want to hear the
noise.
The noise.
Well, noise. No, noise is not the word. It's sound.
It's the
sound.
Orchestra of the skies.
Yeah. And if you're filming, for instance, this afternoon, you'll have to use your video equipment, for instance, to record the trio of Messerschmitt's 109 with the incredible sound of the one and only Daimler-Benz 601 engine we do have here. It's incredible.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because the aircraft itself is still a Bouchon,
yeah,
but it's retrofitted with a real engine, so we say.
So the aircraft became again a Messerschmitt 109 and lost its personality as a Spanish-built under license Messerschmitt 109, but equipped with an English Merlin engine, and so this is an aircraft with an interesting personal history, but anyway, it's a real Messerschmitt 109G complete with the sound, and it's incredible to hear. It's a trio of airplane, but it would be easy to imagine what it was when you had 24 of those arriving low altitude, high speed, and
or on your tail
with intents of doing a war.
Yeah,
and this is what Flying Legends is about. It's getting back to history and at the same time presenting some of the most beautiful most emotional flying machines ever made. If you take the guns out, these aircraft look at a Spitfire as just as a vehicle. And if you look at a Spitfire and at the same time you take a very famous poem written by a Spitfire pilot at the time, and there's not a word about guns, about war, about nothing. It's just about the great halls of sky and dancing like no bird, no eagle would ever think. And these aircraft are just pure magic, and most of us who fly a little bit these aircraft, who participate in their existence, are just subject to, are just fond of them because of their magic, because they are beautiful pieces of machinery. They're almost like animals. They are probably more creatures than creations, and they are emotional, and nowhere else in the world will you be confronted with such a casting. All these machines in front of us, it's time warp.
It was an irony, though, wasn't it, Bernard, that we've attributed poetry and emotion to the Spitfire, and yet the designer of the Spitfire wasn't poetic or emotional about it at all. He just wanted to get it in the air. He wanted to make his contribution before he died, and he didn't see the poetry of the Spitfire. He saw the engineering problem, and he solved it.
Yeah, and Reginald Mitchell, the designer, the architect. I'd rather favor the word architect, because when you're talking about aircraft, you're really talking about architecture more than, well, of course it's engineering, but engineering is too short a word for defining what designing something like a Spitfire or a Hurricane or a pt8 or whatever. And Reginald Mitchell was, at the time, he was concerned with engineering problems, and when he heard that they were going to call this aircraft the Spitfire, he said, "That's the word. That's such a bloody name."
Yeah.
He found
They
it,
bloody would call it that.
but at the same time, he invented the Spitfire. He and his team of designers invented the Spitfire, and then history did the rest. And if you go to the Imperial War Museum archives, and if you want to do a film about the Spitfire, for instance, you ask them, do you have some archives filmed archives about the Spitfire? They will say, yeah, we do have probably 6,000 hours filmed during the war. And you say, do you have something about the Hurricane, which in fact probably was more important during the Battle of Britain than the Spitfire? And they would say, yeah, we do have something about the Hurricane. We have something like 200 hours.
Yeah.
So that's it. History was written, and Reg Mitchell was not there would be interesting if he had lived. And maybe he would have changed his mind.
It's a funny thing. Again, I used to have a lot of contact with Gordon Mitchell, his son, and Gordon was of the opinion, based on his research and the people that he spoke to in subsequent years when he was young, that had Reg Mitchell survived, we wouldn't have seen a Spitfire pass the Mark V.
He probably would have designed.
He would have designed. There were many other designs in his mind, and the Spitfire would have been consigned to the early part of the war, with his other designs coming through. But of course, it was such a good aircraft to base a design on that off it went and stayed with us. It was the only aircraft I think that stayed in production right the way through the war for the Allies.
With the Messerschmitt 109.
Yeah.
Which in fact was designed by a man who in many aspects was a bit like Reginald Mitchell. Ernst Messerschmitt was this kind of man. He was an engineer.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Duxford, welcome to Flying Legends. Gentlemen, start your engines.
We're going to shut up now and let you listen to this lot.